So I was supposed to start this video months ago. God had laid it on my heart to begin telling you about my life, my testimony. I've been putting it off because I'm like, I'm still waiting on things, a breakthrough that God has told me to stand on. And I'm like, it's not happened yet, but he has just really been pushing it. My cousin this past week, he put his video of his marriage testimony up on Facebook, and I'm like, okay, that encouraged me to go ahead and begin it. I'll probably have a part 2. No, I will have a part 2. So I was brought up in church my entire life. Every time the doors were open, we always went. I was saved at a young age, lived my life as a Christian. I always was a people pleaser. Never wanted to do anything wrong, have anyone, think less of me. I just didn't like the thought of anyone ever thinking that I could do wrong. So when I was 16, I started dating. I started dating somebody that if you would have told me the year before that would have been the person that I was going to date, I would have laughed at you, thought you were crazy, because that year before we played soccer, and he wasn't even from the school. We were at practice. I came home, told my mom, I'm like, I will never ever play soccer with that guy again. Like, he thought he was just the best, and I couldn't deal with it. So I started that day and I quit that day. So when I started dating him, I had really put it off. Like, he kept asking, and I'm like, no, I didn't think it would last. So I'm like, fine. Well, days went by, weeks, months, and years. Well, a year. When I turned 17, or we were 17, he asked me to marry him. And of course, he had got my dad's approval. So we were engaged. He always went to church with me. We went to church together. Whenever we got engaged, and we started planning a wedding, we were planning on getting married the next year. When we were 18, our pastor, we started marriage counseling before we got married. Well, other things happened. I got pregnant at 18, so we had to put the actual wedding off, even though we still wanted to get married before our baby was born. So we done a little ceremony in our church when I was 7 months pregnant. So, everything was perfect. I have no complaints. Like, of course, there's the small things, you know, that you're always gonna struggle with in marriage. We had 3 kids within the 4 years of our marriage, and our last child that we had, he had complications. He was born with bacterial meningitis, so we had a rough time with that. But he was a miracle. He is a miracle because they never expected him to live. So, you know, in our first, probably, I would say 6 or 7 years of marriage. I mean, a lot of people say perfect, but I mean, it really was. I'm really gonna try and make it through this without crying. So there might be some pauses. I got to the point, I guess, to where I just felt alone. I can't tell you why. We were still going to church. We're helping with a youth group in our church. I honestly can't tell you what happened. I would start to drink and go out. About our 8th year of marriage. And done things that I wasn't proud of and that hurt him. And we went to marriage counseling after it. And it took me a little bit after that to actually feel like, okay, this is, you know, this marriage is what I want. This is what I have to stay, you know, I have to make it work. But, you know, we got through it, and years went by, and, you know, everything seemed okay again. Up until a couple years ago, I just fell again. Like, let me tell you. I'm sorry. I never had to work. I had always got anything and everything. Even the kids. We were blessed. I just got to the point to where I guess it wasn't enough. That I just needed the attention from other people. All the attention in the world that I got from one person I started looking for it in other people. And I don't mean like going out with people. Just like if people would message me or talk to me, that's what I liked. It was almost like that was something that I was addicted to, I guess. I don't know if that can be an addiction, but I just really liked it. So within these last 2 years, I started drinking a lot. He would go to church. He played in praise and worship. And most of the time I would go on a Sunday morning. But other than that, I wouldn't go. I just couldn't handle the conviction. I knew that once, God convicted me, once He started dealing with me, that I would have to give that stuff up, and I didn't want to. So I would go, ever so often on a Sunday morning. So the last year, I started drinking and having parties a lot. A lot. My kids are old enough now where they remember, they know what's going on, whether I try to hide it or not. Even though I would always try to put it, like, my drinks in a cup or something, they always knew. I would always try and hide alcohol, and they always found it. But then I started where I was mixing Xanax with alcohol. And I do I have restriction for this because it's for my anxiety and my panic attacks. But, so I would start doing that. I am not one for any kind of drugs or any addictions. I always was like, no, that would, never happen. But, what happened? I like the way that I could take them together and just shut everything off. Like, I wouldn't remember anything. Like the way that I could just be whoever. No one, no one cared. I just liked hanging out with everybody and having fun. Well, that fun ended with broken hearts. And not just my husband's, but everybody's. I hurt my kids, my family, I had ruined everything. Just 1 second. Okay. My life is over. I don't want to go into a lot of details of the things that happened last year. I'm hoping for our part 2 video with my breakthrough, and then I could maybe share more on that. But my whole message for this is God doesn't make mistakes. I always thought that I would be happier, just not being married sometimes, or just being able to just go out without attachments. You don't want that. If that is something that you're dealing with in your marriage, you have got to pray about it. That is not what God wants. Unless you are in an abusive relationship, I believe God puts you with the person that you marry. Of course, you're always going to have some kind of struggle in marriage. But unless you make it, you make those decisions of ruining it, or wanting out. That's your free will. That's what God gives you. I mean, I have learned so much in the past 7 months about myself. One day in December of 2019, I woke up and we had been separated already for, the 5 months. And I woke up one day and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, it was just like a light bulb that came on. I'm like, this is not what I want in life. This is not what God gave me. And I'm like, what did I do? So I started counseling. Going back to church, praying, reading the Bible, like I had never done before. God has showed me so much about myself. The things that I needed to work on. Things that I should have already been. You just because you think you're not happy in your marriage, and like I said, unless it's an abusive relationship, God put that person in your life. Sorry. But God put that person in your life. There's things that we should have done differently. I've never been one to be a prayer out loud. But that is so important. Praying with your spouse. Putting God number one in your marriage. Making your spouse, your number one, other than, of course, God, but, above anybody else, even your kids. I had the hardest time with that, because I always felt like, why would I put him before my kids? it is important. I mean, when your kids are gone, the spouse is who you have. I mean, that's your person. Okay, I'm really trying not to cry. But, you know, you think that it looks better on the other side. Like, you know, if you wanted to get out of your marriage just because, like, you know, you just don't want to be in it anymore, that grass on the other side, I mean, you might be happy for a few months, but if it is not of God, you're still not going to be happy. And if you don't have God, like, in your heart, you're always going to feel unhappy or alone. If you start feeling that way, I would really just reach out to, you know, people that can pray for you. Your pastors. Just talk to somebody. You know, if you can't talk to your spouse, talk to somebody. You always should make your husband the head of the household. Like, when it becomes to making decisions and making the final say, you should always back them up. I mean, it makes them feel better too, because that's how God made it. You know, they're supposed to be the ones that make that final decision of anything. And it may be hard for you to stand back and let that happen. I mean, it was for me. But it's supposed to be that way. You need to make sure you have good communication. I mean, if you can't talk to them, if you just are silent whenever, you know, you guys talk about things, that's really not good either. That is something that you would really have to work on. I mean, even if it's, I mean, you're not always going to agree on everything, and that's okay. But the communication is really important in your marriage. Just you know, don't wait. Don't let it build up in you. Don't let it take years or even months to build up, like, that you're feeling, alone or depressed. God gave you the marriage that you were supposed to be in. I mean, don't think that it would be better with someone else. I'm serious. If you feel that way, you always really need to talk to somebody. Mainly someone who can pray with you and just help you with it, or get counseling. You just don't want it to go too far, where you are really, really gonna need God, His, Him to give you a miracle to get you out of it. Because that's really what it will take. So, I think that's pretty much all I needed to say. Like I said, God has called me to stand on a breakthrough in my life, and I hope that a part 2 will come, and I will give more details on things. But again, I mean, if you need someone to pray with, you can message me. If you feel like this video will help somebody, you can share it. But really, just don't give up on God. Don't let God go. That is what your marriage needs. It's never gonna be without struggles, but let me tell you, it's definitely priority, and I would really encourage you to make that number 1 in your marriage. Anyway, that's all I have for tonight. You can share if you need to. Other than that, be looking for the second video.